My head feels like it's been stuffed with cotton. The morning light pierces through unfamiliar curtains, making me squint. Where am I? The question echoes in my empty mind as I sit up in a strange bed. Hello? My voice sounds foreign even to myself. No answer. The hotel room is upscale, with modern furnishings and a view of what appears to be downtown Torrance. But I have no memory of checking in. Hell, I have no memory of anything. My heart races as I scan the room, searching for clues about my identity. A professional camera bag catches my eye. Inside, I find a high-end Canon and several lenses worth more than most people's monthly salary. The memory card is full of stunning wildlife photos. Bears, wolves, rare birds. Did I take these? The technical precision suggests I did, but I can't remember a single shot. My hands shake as I find a wallet on the nightstand. Lauren Wood, the driver's license reads. The woman in the photo is me. Blonde hair, blue eyes, confident smile. But it feels like I'm looking at a stranger. Lauren, I whisper, testing the name. It doesn't trigger any recognition. The wallet contains credit cards, some cash, and a business card that makes me pause. Torrance Nature Reserve, protecting our wild heritage. On the back, someone has scribbled a note. Meeting tomorrow, AMGP. I stumble to the bathroom, bracing myself against the counter. The mirror reflects a woman in her mid-30s, athletic build, with shadows under her eyes. My fingers trace a small scar near my temple. How did I get it? The question joins the growing list of mysteries. My phone shows it's 7:43 a.m. If the meeting note is for today, I have just over an hour to pull myself together. The phone's contents are frustratingly unhelpful. No recent calls, no messages, no photos. It's as if my life has been wiped clean. In the closet, I find outdoor gear and professional clothing. Everything fits perfectly, but nothing sparks a memory. A laptop sits on the desk, password protected. Each dead end increases my anxiety. The wildlife photos are my only real clue. I spread them across the bed, majestic creatures captured in their natural habitat. One photo stands out, a rare California condor in flight. The metadata shows it was taken just 3 days ago. Okay, Lauren, I tell myself, gathering the camera equipment. Time to find out who you are. As I prepare to leave, I catch my reflection again. The woman staring back is a mystery, but something in her eyes speaks of determination. Whatever happened to my memories, the nature reserve seems like the best place to start looking for answers. I check out of the hotel, stepping into the bright California morning. The streets of Torrance are busy with morning commuters, all seeming to know exactly where they're going. I envy their certainty. With the nature reserve's address plugged into my phone's GPS, I hail a taxi. As we drive through the city, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. But maybe that's just paranoia when your own mind has become a stranger. After a fruitless morning at the nature reserve office, where no one seemed to know about my appointment, I needed to clear my head. The taxi driver suggested Wilson Park had great jogging trails. Something about running felt right, like muscle memory was more reliable than my brain. The morning air was crisp as I started my first lap. My body moved with practiced ease, suggesting this was part of my routine before. Whatever happened, the rhythmic pounding of feet against pavement helped quiet the chaos in my mind. That's when I first saw her. She came around the bend like a vision in navy running shorts and a gray tank top, brunette ponytail swaying with each stride. Her form was perfect, each movement efficient and graceful. Our eyes met briefly as we passed, and something flickered in my chest. The next morning, I returned at the same time. Part of me hoped to see her again, though I couldn't explain why. Sure enough, there she was, maintaining the same steady pace. This time, she gave me a slight nod as we passed. Days began to blur together, marked by these silent morning encounters. I learned her schedule. She always arrived at 6:45 a.m., did exactly 5 laps, and left by 7:30. Her green eyes seemed to hold secrets. Or maybe I was just projecting my own mysteries onto her. Sometimes she wore her hair down, brown waves catching the early sunlight. She had an elegant profile, high cheekbones, and a small scar near her left eyebrow that somehow made her more intriguing. I caught myself wondering about her story. Our wordless ritual evolved slowly. The nod became a smile. The smile became a quiet mourning as we passed each other. Each brief interaction sent a strange warmth through my body, like déjà vu without the memory. One particularly foggy morning, the park was almost empty. The mist gave everything a dreamlike quality, making her seem like she might be another figment of my imagination. But then she stopped at the water fountain at the same time I did. "Looks like we're the only crazy ones out in this weather," she said, her voice rich and warm. "Some habits are hard to break," I replied, "even when you can't remember forming them." She tilted her head, studying me with those forest green eyes. "You're new to Torrance, aren't you?" "I'm Georgia." "Lauren," I said, the name still feeling foreign on my tongue. "And yes, I think I am. Though honestly, I'm not sure about much these days." Something in my tone must have caught her attention. She looked like she wanted to ask more, but instead just smiled. "Well, Lauren, it's nice to finally properly meet you. See you tomorrow?" I nodded, watching her disappear into the mist. That night, I dreamed of running through fog, chasing a shadowy figure with green eyes. When I woke, my head was pounding, but a single clear memory had surfaced. I'd been taking photos at a nature reserve when something went wrong. The next morning, Georgia wasn't on the trail. I felt her absence like a missing step in a familiar staircase. Instead, I found a business card tucked under my windshield wiper. The same one from the nature reserve, but with a fresh note: "If you're looking for answers, come by my office. GP." My heart raced as I realized GP Georgia Patterson, the reserve manager. The woman I'd been passing every morning was connected to my past somehow. The coincidence seemed too perfect to be random, but something told me I could trust those green eyes. I held the card, feeling like I was finally holding a real clue to my identity. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I would get some answers. But for now, I completed my laps alone, the ghost of Georgia's presence keeping me company in the growing morning light. The Nature Reserve office was a modern building nestled among ancient oaks. My hands trembled slightly as I pushed open the glass doors. Exactly at 9 a.m., the receptionist directed me to the second floor, where Miss Patterson was waiting. Georgia looked different in her professional attire. A forest green blazer that matched her eyes, dark slacks, and subtle silver jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, but a few rebellious strands framed her face. The running clothes hadn't done justice to her elegant beauty. "Lauren," she smiled, gesturing to a chair. "I was wondering when you'd find your way here." "You knew who I was all along?" I tried to keep the accusation out of my voice. "Not at first," she admitted, leaning against her desk. "But after our third morning passing each other, I recognized you from your portfolio. Your work with the California Condor Recovery Project was remarkable." My head spun. "I worked here?" "You were a freelancer, documenting our conservation efforts." She pulled out a folder. "These are some of your photos from last month. They're extraordinary." The images were similar to those I'd found on my camera, intimate portraits of endangered species in their natural habitat. One photo showed a mountain lion at dawn, its eyes holding a story I couldn't remember capturing. "Why didn't you say something during our morning runs?" George's expression softened. "Because you seemed lost, and in my experience, lost people need to find their own way back. But when you mentioned not remembering things..." She paused. "Lauren, what happened to you?" I told her everything, waking up in the hotel, the memory loss, the mysterious note. As I spoke, she took notes, her brow furrowing with concern. "Here's what I can offer," she said finally. "We need a photographer for our new endangered species initiative. The position is yours if you want it. Maybe working here will help trigger your memories." "Just like that? You'd trust someone with amnesia?" She stood and walked to the window, looking out over the reserve. "Your eyes still light up the same way when you talk about wildlife. Memory or not, that passion doesn't change." The next few hours were a blur of paperwork and introductions. Georgia showed me around the reserve, her hand occasionally brushing mine as she pointed out various locations. Each touch sent tiny sparks through my skin. "This was your favorite spot," she said, leading me to a hidden clearing. A makeshift blind was set up, perfect for wildlife photography. "You spent hours here last month, tracking a family of foxes." I set up my camera, the motions automatic despite my blank memory. Georgia watched silently as I adjusted settings and checked angles. When I looked through the viewfinder, something clicked, not a memory, but a feeling of rightness. "See?" She smiled. "Some things are stored in more than just memories." The afternoon light caught her hair, creating a halo effect. For a moment, I forgot about my missing memories, lost in the way her presence filled the space between us. She must have felt something too, because her cheeks flushed slightly. "I should get back to the office," she said quickly. "But first, there's something you should know. The day before you disappeared, you were working on a special project. Something about unusual animal movements near the reserve borders. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of movements? That's just it. You never told me. You said it was better if I didn't know the details yet. She handed me a key. This opens the storage room where we keep your previous work. Start there tomorrow? I nodded, clutching the key. As she walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that my lost memories weren't just about forgetting, they were about something I'd discovered, something important enough to make me disappear. That night, organizing my new office, I found a note tucked inside an old camera bag. The handwriting was my own, but the message made no sense. Trust GP with your life, not with the truth. I stared at Georgia's business card, wondering what secrets lay behind those green eyes. The storage room smelled of dust and old paper. I'd been here for hours, surrounded by boxes of my previous work. Each photograph felt like a window into a stranger's life. My life. Georgia occasionally checked on me, bringing coffee and quiet encouragement. Found anything interesting? She asked, setting down a fresh cup. Maybe. I held up a series of photos showing unusual tire tracks near the reserve's northern boundary. These were taken at night. Why would I be out there after dark? She leaned close to examine the images, her perfume carrying hints of vanilla and cedar. Those are from the restricted area. You needed special clearance for that project. A flash hit me, running through darkness, the weight of my camera, heart pounding. The memory vanished as quickly as it came, leaving behind only a sense of urgency. Lauren? Georgia's hand was on my shoulder. You went pale. Are you okay? Just fragments, I managed. Nothing solid. We spent the afternoon reviewing more photos. Georgia's presence was both comforting and distracting. She'd casually touch my arm while pointing out details, and each contact sent warmth spreading through my body. Look at this one, she said, reaching across me for a photo. Her hair brushed my cheek, and suddenly another memory surfaced, the same vanilla cedar scent, but in a different context. A dark room, whispered warnings, the press of paper being pushed into my hands. We've done this before, I blurted out. Gone through photos together, I mean. In your office, late at night. Georgia went still. Yes, we did. The night before you disappeared. More fragments came flooding back. Georgia's concerned face in lamplight, her voice saying, "Be careful." The weight of a USB drive in my pocket. Fear, not for myself, but for her. There was something in these photos, I said slowly. Something important. Lauren. She hesitated. Maybe we should take a break. You're pushing too hard. But I was already diving into another box. My hands seemed to know what they were looking for, pulling out a folder labeled Migration Patterns. Inside were photos of large trucks entering the reserve at odd hours. GPS coordinates were carefully noted on each one. The last photo showed a partially open container with something that looked suspiciously like animal cages. I remember the trucks, I whispered. I was tracking them, wasn't I? Georgia took the photos, her hands trembling slightly. You never told me what you found. You just said it was bigger than we thought, and then... She swallowed hard. Then you were gone. Another memory hit, typing frantically on my laptop, copying files, hearing footsteps approaching, making a decision that would cost me everything I knew. I did this to myself, I realized. Whatever I discovered, I chose to forget it. Georgia's eyes widened. What are you saying? I think. I struggled to hold on to the fragments. I think I erased my own memories to protect something, or someone. She reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers. The gesture felt familiar, right? We'll figure this out together, she promised. But the note I'd found yesterday echoed in my mind. Trust GP with your life, not with the truth. I looked at our joined hands, at her worried green eyes, and wondered which part of me I should listen to, the one who wrote that warning, or the one who felt so inexplicably drawn to her. That night, I dreamed of Georgia's office, of urgent whispers and shared secrets. When I woke, tears were running down my face, but I couldn't remember why. The only clear thing was the growing certainty that Georgia Patterson was either my salvation or my downfall, and I had no idea which. The pieces started falling into place like a deadly puzzle. 3 weeks of combing through my old photos had revealed a pattern. The trucks always came on moonless nights, always through the north gate, always when the regular security patrol was on the opposite side of the reserve. "It's a trafficking operation," I told Georgia one evening as we sat in her office. "They're using the reserve as a cover to move endangered species." She paced by the window, silhouetted against the setting sun. "That's a serious accusation, Lauren. We need proof." I think I had it. I spread out the surveillance photos. "Look at the dates. The night I disappeared, there was a major shipment scheduled." Georgia stopped pacing, her face troubled. "Why wouldn't you have come to me with this?" The note in my handwriting flashed through my mind. "Trust GP with your life, not with the truth." I pushed the thought away, watching her instead. The fading light caught the green of her eyes, reminding me of forest depths hiding ancient secrets. "Maybe I was trying to protect you," I suggested softly. She moved closer, her hand finding mine on the desk. "Or maybe you didn't trust me." The touch sent electricity through my arm, triggering another memory flash. This same office, different night, similar tension in the air, words unspoken hanging between us. "I think I trusted you more than anyone," I whispered, the certainty of it surprising me. Her fingers tightened on mine. "Then trust me now. We need to set up surveillance on the north gate." That night, we huddled in my old photography blind near the access road. George's shoulder pressed against mine as we waited in darkness. Her warmth was distracting, but comforting in the cool night air. "Tell me what you remember," she murmured. "Fragments mostly. Running, fear, a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff." I turned to face her. "And you, always you, somehow in the background of every broken memory." The moonlight painted silver highlights in her hair. She was close enough that I could see the slight tremble in her lips as she spoke. "We were close before." Another memory surfaced. Georgia's laugh during shared coffee breaks, her hand lingering on my arm, the way she'd look at me when she thought I wasn't watching. A distant engine sound broke the moment. Headlights appeared on the access road, and we pressed closer together in the blind. The truck matched the ones from my photos, moving slowly through the gate. "Got you," Georgia whispered, snapping pictures with my backup camera. But as we watched, a second set of headlights appeared, an unmarked SUV following the truck. Something about it triggered a warning bell in my mind. "We need to go," I said suddenly, grabbing Georgia's arm. "Now." She started to protest, but then we heard car doors slamming, footsteps approaching our hiding spot. Georgia's eyes met mine in the darkness, wide with understanding and fear. Without thinking, I pulled her close, pressing my lips to hers. The kiss was brief but intense, born of adrenaline and something deeper, something that had been building since our first morning encounter on the jogging trail. When we broke apart, her breath came in short gasps. "Lauren." "Run," I whispered, pushing her toward the back exit. "I'll create a distraction." "Not without you," she hissed, gripping my hand. The footsteps were closer now. In that moment, looking at Georgia's determined face, I understood why my past self had chosen to forget everything. Some things, some people, were worth protecting at any cost. "Together then," I agreed, and we slipped into the darkness just as flashlight beams cut through our abandoned hiding spot. That night marked a turning point. We had proof of the trafficking, but more importantly, we had each other. As we drove back to the city, George's hand found mine across the center console, and I knew that whatever memories I'd lost, this was one I would fight to keep. The first threat arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipped under my hotel room door. "Stop digging," it read in cut-out magazine letters. I stared at it over my morning coffee, remembering the kiss Georgia and I had shared in the darkness 2 nights ago. When I arrived at the reserve, Georgia was waiting in my office, her face pale. She held up an identical note. "Found this on my windshield." "They know we're onto them," I said, fighting the urge to pull her close. Since that night in the blind, we'd been dancing around the shift in our relationship, both focused on the investigation. "Lauren, I'm more worried about you." She moved closer, her hand brushing my arm. "If they know who you are, they might know why you lost your memories." The thought had occurred to me too. Each day brought more fragments back. Enough to know I'd been closing in on something big before my memory loss, but the crucial pieces remained frustratingly out of reach. We spent the day reviewing security footage, shoulders touching as we leaned over my laptop. Every casual contact sent sparks through my body, making it hard to concentrate. Georgia seemed equally affected, her breath catching whenever our hands brushed. As evening fell, we decided to check the north gate one last time. The sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold as we drove up in Georgia's SUV. "Movement in the trees," Georgia whispered suddenly, pointing left. Before I could respond, headlights blazed behind us. Too bright, too close. Georgia floored the accelerator, but another vehicle appeared ahead, blocking our escape. "Hold on!" She yanked the wheel, taking us off-road. Branches whipped against the windows as we crashed through the underbrush. My hand found hers on the gearshift, holding tight. We lost our pursuers in the dense forest, but the SUV was running on fumes. Georgia pulled into an abandoned ranger station, killing the engine. In the sudden silence, our heavy breathing seemed loud. "Are you okay?" I turned to her, checking for injuries. In the dim light, her eyes were dark with fear and something else. "I thought..." Her voice broke. "When those lights appeared, I thought I was going to lose you again." The last word hung between us. Again. How many times had we been here before? I reached for her in the darkness, my fingers finding her face. She leaned into my touch, and then we were kissing, desperate and deep. All the tension of the past weeks, all the unspoken feelings poured into that kiss. Her hands tangled in my hair as I pulled her closer, tasting vanilla and cedar and home. Memories flickered at the edges of my mind, other kisses, other nights, fragments of a relationship I couldn't fully remember but felt in every cell of my body. We made love in the back of her SUV, surrounded by darkness and danger. Every touch felt both new and familiar, like my body remembered what my mind had forgotten. Georgia whispered my name like a prayer, and for a moment, I was whole again. Afterward, wrapped in an emergency blanket, she traced patterns on my skin. "We should call for backup." "No," I said, another memory surfacing. "We can't trust the regular channels. That's what I discovered before. The trafficking operation has people inside the system." She propped herself up on an elbow, her hair falling around us like a curtain. "Then we're on our own? We have each other." I pulled her down for another kiss, softer this time. And I'm starting to remember why that was enough before. A twig snapped outside, making us both freeze. Georgia reached for her phone while I grabbed my camera. It might be our only chance to document who was after us. "Lauren," she whispered, her hand finding mine in the darkness. "Whatever happens, I'm not letting you disappear again." I squeezed her hand, thinking of all the memories still lost, all the dangers still ahead. But with Georgia beside me, warm and real and fierce in her protection, I felt ready to face whatever came next. We held our breath, waiting in the darkness, two women against what felt like the whole world. But for the first time since waking up without my memories, I knew exactly where I belonged. The storm came out of nowhere, turning the afternoon sky black. Georgia and I had taken shelter in her office, reviewing the photos from last night's close call. Thunder crashed outside, and suddenly my head exploded with pain. "Lauren?" Georgia's voice seemed far away. "What's wrong?" Images flooded my mind. Not fragments this time, but complete memories. A thunderstorm just like this one, 3 weeks ago. Me in this same office, downloading files onto a USB drive. Footsteps in the hallway. Panic. "I remember," I gasped, gripping the desk. "Georgia, I remember everything." She was beside me instantly, steadying me as the memories crashed through the walls I'd built in my own mind. The trafficking operation wasn't just about animals, it was about money laundering, corrupt officials, and something even darker. "The photos," I said, my voice shaking. "The ones from the North Gate, they showed more than just illegal wildlife transport. There were documents visible through the truck windows, financial records." Georgia's hands tightened on my shoulders. "That's why they came after you?" Another crack of thunder. Another wave of memories. I didn't just stumble onto their operation. Someone inside the reserve was feeding me information. Notes left in my blind, encrypted emails. Who? I closed my eyes, letting the memories surface. I never knew their real identity. They used the codename Condor. But they helped me track the money, connect the dots. Lightning illuminated the office, and I remembered the night everything went wrong. I'd finally gathered enough evidence to expose the entire operation. But then I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to see, a list of names, people involved in the conspiracy. "I chose to forget," I whispered, looking up at Georgia. They were closing in, and I knew too much. So I used a technique I'd learned years ago during meditation training, a way to temporarily block memories. You erased your own mind to protect the evidence? Georgia's voice was a mix of horror and admiration. To protect everyone involved. I touched her face gently. Including you. The storm raged outside as I explained how I'd hidden the evidence in multiple locations, each clue leading to the next. My amnesia wasn't just protection, it was a security measure. Only by slowly recovering my memories could I piece together where everything was hidden. The USB drive, I said, suddenly standing up. It's here, in this office. I remember hiding it the night everything went down. Georgia watched as I moved to the old filing cabinet, feeling under the bottom drawer. My fingers found the small package taped underneath. This is everything? She asked as I pulled out the drive. No. I shook my head. This is just the beginning. There's more evidence scattered across the city. I divided it up so they couldn't find it all at once. Lightning flashed again, and in that brief illumination, I saw tears in Georgia's eyes. I was so worried about you, she whispered. When you disappeared that night. I pulled her close, breathing in her familiar scent. I left you a note, didn't I? Telling you not to look for me? She nodded against my shoulder. I ignored it, of course. Of course you did. I smiled, then turned serious. But now we have to be careful. These people, they're powerful, and they're closer than you think. Thunder rolled again, and with it came one final, crucial memory. The list of names I'd seen. The one that had forced my desperate decision. One name in particular stood out. Georgia, I said slowly, there's something else you need to know. About your deputy director. Before I could finish, the power went out, plunging the office into darkness. In the silence that followed, we heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, purposeful, coming closer. Georgia's hand found mine in the dark. Back door, she whispered. As we slipped out into the storm, lightning revealed a shadow moving in the office we'd just left. My memories were back, but now we had an even bigger problem. Because I finally remembered exactly who we were up against, and why I'd been so afraid. The rain soaked us as we ran to my car, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing, putting together a plan. We had the evidence now, but more importantly, we had each other. And this time, I wouldn't need to face the danger alone. The revelation hit Georgia like a physical blow. We sat in my car, parked behind an abandoned gas station, as rain hammered the roof. I'd just shown her the list of names from the USB drive, and her face had gone white. Robert can't be involved, she whispered, staring at her deputy director's name. He's been with the reserve for 20 years. That's why it's perfect. I touched her hand gently. He has access to everything, and no one would question his authority. Thunder rolled overhead as Georgia processed the betrayal. Robert had been her mentor, the one who'd promoted her to manager 3 years ago. Now we knew why. He'd wanted someone he could manipulate. The shipment logs, she said suddenly. He always insisted on handling them personally. I thought he was just being helpful. My phone buzzed, an encrypted message from Condor. They're moving tonight, North Gate, biggest shipment yet. I showed Georgia the message. We need to. A crash of breaking glass cut me off. Headlights swept across us as an SUV pulled into the gas station. Through the rain, I recognized Robert's silhouette in the driver's seat. Go, Georgia yelled. I floored it, sending us fishtailing onto the wet road. The SUV roared after us, joined by another vehicle behind it. Georgia pulled out her phone, trying to call for help, but there was no signal. The reserve, I said, taking a sharp turn. We can lose them in the maintenance roads. Georgia gripped the dashboard as we sped through the rain. Lauren, the North Gate, if they're moving tonight, this might be our only chance. She was right. Whatever they were trafficking, this shipment was important enough to bring Robert out personally. We had to get evidence. I made a split-second decision, turning onto a narrow trail. Hold on! The car bounced violently as we crashed through underbrush. Behind us, one SUV attempted to follow and got stuck. But Robert's vehicle was still coming. There. Georgia pointed to an old service tunnel, a maintenance access point that ran under part of the reserve. I killed the lights and pulled in, cutting the engine. We sat in darkness, hearts pounding, as Robert's SUV roared past. When the sound faded, Georgia turned to me. You knew, didn't you? before you lost your memories. That's why you didn't tell me everything. I knew you'd confront him directly. I touched her cheek. I couldn't risk losing you. Her eyes shimmered in the dim light. You didn't lose me. You found me again. The kiss was desperate, charged with adrenaline and fear, and something deeper. When we broke apart, Georgia pressed her forehead to mine. No more secrets? No more secrets, I promised. A distant engine sound made us both tense. Through the rain, we could see lights at the north gate. Multiple vehicles. It's starting, Georgia whispered. We crept through the wet underbrush, using my camera's night vision to navigate. The scene at the gate made my blood run cold. 3 large trucks, dozens of cages visible inside. Robert stood supervising as men loaded more cages. Got you, I whispered, starting to photograph everything. Then Georgia gasped. In one of the cages, illuminated by headlights, was a sight that explained everything. A California condor, one of only 100 left in the wild, worth millions on the black market. The recovery program, Georgia said, her voice breaking. He used it as cover to capture them instead of protecting them. I kept shooting, documenting everything, until a twig snapped behind us. We spun around to find 2 armed men, guns trained on our heads. Inside, one growled, gesturing toward the loading area. Robert's face showed no surprise when we were marched into the light. If anything, he looked disappointed. Georgia, he sighed. I tried to keep you out of this. And Lauren. He smiled coldly. Back from your little vacation, I see. It's over, I said, holding Georgia's hand tight. We have proof of everything. No, he replied, pulling out a gun. Now, it really is over. A shot rang out, but it wasn't from Robert's gun. He crumpled, clutching his shoulder, as chaos erupted around us. FBI agents swarmed the area, emerging from the darkness like ghosts. In the confusion, Georgia pulled me behind a truck. We held each other, shaking, as the raid continued around us. When it was over, when Robert and his men were in custody, she finally spoke. How did they know? I smiled, pulling out my phone. Remember Condor? Meet Special Agent Sarah Chen, FBI Wildlife Trafficking Task Force. She's been building this case for months. Georgia laughed through her tears, then pulled me into a fierce kiss. Around us, agents were securing the scene, but in that moment, nothing existed except us, the rain, and the knowledge that we'd made it through together. The press conference was a circus. Federal agents surrounded us as reporters shouted questions about the largest wildlife trafficking takedown in California history. Georgia squeezed my hand, her green eyes scanning the room with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. Ms. Wood, can you explain how you uncovered this operation? A reporter thrust a microphone toward me. I glanced at Georgia, remembering everything we'd been through. Sometimes the most important stories are hidden in plain sight. Special Agent Chen stepped forward, taking control of the narrative. She detailed how our investigation had exposed a network stretching from local wildlife reserves to international black markets. The California condors we'd rescued became symbols of hope. Later, in the quiet of Georgia's office, the adrenaline finally wore off. Boxes of evidence surrounded us, each file a testament to months of dangerous work. We did it, Georgia whispered, pulling me close. Her lips found mine, soft and urgent. The kiss carried the weight of our shared journey, the morning runs, the lost memories, the nights spent piecing together a dangerous puzzle. Not just us, I corrected. The condors, the reserve, everyone we protected. The investigation had revealed a shocking truth. Robert and his network weren't just trafficking animals. They were systematically destroying breeding programs, selling rare species to collectors who treated living creatures like collectible objects. How many species did they target? I asked, spreading out the recovered documents. Georgia's finger traced a list. 9 endangered species. Condors, desert tortoises, island foxes. Her voice broke. They were destroying entire ecosystems for profit. Night fell outside, casting shadows across the evidence. We'd won, but the cost had been high. My lost memories, Georgia's betrayal by her mentor, the years of carefully constructed deception. Do you remember the first time we met? I asked suddenly. She laughed. On the jogging trail. You were a mystery, even then. The memories that had once been fractured now felt complete. I remembered everything. How I'd first discovered the trafficking ring, how I deliberately erased my memories to protect the investigation. I would do it all again, I said, looking into her eyes. Losing my memories, running, fighting, all of it. Agent Chen arrived with final paperwork. The case was solid. Robert and his entire network would spend decades in prison. The wildlife reserves would be restructured, with new protections put in place. Congratulations, she told us. You've saved more than just animals. You've saved entire ecosystems. That night, we celebrated quietly. No big parties, just us, a bottle of wine, and the knowledge that we'd made a difference. Georgia's head rested on my shoulder as we watched the sunset over the reserve. What happens now? She asked. I traced patterns on her hand. Now we keep working, keep protecting. The condors had survived against impossible odds, so had we. As darkness fell, Georgia pulled me closer, and I knew our real story was just beginning. Outside, somewhere in the protected wilderness, a condor spread its wings and flew free because of us. The courtroom fell silent as Robert was led in, his once proud shoulders now stooped in a prison jumpsuit. Georgia's hand found mine as we watched from the gallery. This was it, the culmination of our investigation, our fight, our love story. The evidence is overwhelming, the prosecutor stated, displaying my photographs on the courtroom screens. Each image told a story: endangered species in cages, falsified documents, money changing hands in shadows. Robert didn't look at us once during the proceedings. His empire had crumbled spectacularly, taking down corrupt officials and black market dealers across 3 continents. The California condor trafficking ring was just the tip of the iceberg. Your Honor, Robert's lawyer began his defense, but the facts were undeniable. My photography had captured everything: dates, faces, locations. The USB drive we'd recovered contained enough digital evidence to seal dozens of convictions. During a recess, Georgia and I walked through the courthouse garden. Spring had arrived, bringing new life to the city. Like the season, we too had emerged from darkness into light. Remember when you first woke up without your memories? Georgia asked, touching my cheek. You were so lost, yet something kept bringing you back to me. I smiled, catching her hand. The heart remembers what the mind forgets. The verdict came late that afternoon. Guilty on all counts, 25 years without parole. As Robert was led away, he finally looked at us, not with anger but with defeat. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed again. This time, we were ready. Georgia stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. Today marks a new chapter for wildlife conservation, she announced. The reserve will become a model for protecting endangered species. What was once a cover for corruption will now be a sanctuary of hope. The evidence we'd gathered had led to sweeping reforms: new security systems, independent oversight, international cooperation. The California condor population was already showing signs of recovery. That evening, we celebrated properly. A small gathering at the reserve, surrounded by the people who'd helped bring down the trafficking ring. Agent Chen raised a toast to the photographer who lost everything but found the truth. Later, alone in the observation blind where our investigation had begun, Georgia pulled me close. Moonlight filtered through the trees, painting silver patterns on her skin. I have something to show you, she whispered, leading me to a clearing. There, in the branches of an ancient oak, sat a pair of California condors. Their wings caught the last rays of sunset as they prepared for flight. These weren't just any condors. They were the first successful breeding pair since the reserve's reformation. They're beautiful, I breathed, raising my camera. Georgia wrapped her arms around me from behind as I photographed the magnificent birds. This time, the pictures weren't evidence of crimes. They were proof of renewal, of nature's resilience. You know, she murmured in my ear, I fell in love with you twice. Once before your memories were lost, and again after. I turned in her arms, the camera forgotten. I think I loved you even when I couldn't remember why. The kiss was gentle, unhurried. We had all the time in the world now. Above us, the condors took flight, their wingspan blocking out the stars for a moment before they soared into the darkening sky. That night, we made love under the stars, celebrating not just our victory but our future. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a reminder of what we'd fought to protect. As we lay together afterward, wrapped in blankets and each other, Georgia traced the scar near my temple, the one I'd gotten the night I chose to forget everything. No more running, she whispered. No more forgetting. I pulled her closer, breathing in her vanilla cedar scent. Only remembering, I promised. Every moment, every day with you. The night wrapped around us like a protective cloak, and somewhere in the distance, a condor's cry echoed through the darkness. Not a sound of loss, but one of triumph. 1 year later, I stood in the gallery space, surrounded by my photographs. Each image told part of our story, from the first suspicious trucks to the triumphant release of rehabilitated condors. Georgia moved through the crowd, radiant in a green dress that matched her eyes. And this one? A patron pointed to a black and white photo of the jogging trail. Where everything began again, I smiled, remembering those foggy mornings when a mysterious runner helped guide me back to myself. The exhibition, Lost Amp, Found, a Wildlife Conservation Story, had drawn international attention. But its true purpose wasn't just art. All proceeds would fund a new wildlife protection initiative Georgia and I had created together. She appeared at my side, sliding an arm around my waist. Ready for the big reveal? I nodded, my heart racing. At the center of the gallery, covered by a velvet cloth, waited our surprise. Georgia clinked her glass, calling for attention. A year ago, she began. This woman not only helped expose a criminal enterprise, but also showed us the power of persistence, love, and protection. Today, we're announcing the establishment of the International Wildlife Photography and Conservation Center. The cloth fell away, revealing architectural plans for a state-of-the-art facility. Built on the reformed reserve's grounds, it would combine education, research, and hands-on conservation work. But that's not all, I added, taking Georgia's hand. We're also launching a global network of wildlife photographers and conservationists, working together to protect endangered species worldwide. The crowd applauded, but I wasn't finished. With trembling fingers, I reached into my pocket, pulling out a small box. "Georgia Patterson," I said, dropping to one knee. The gallery fell silent. "You found me when I was lost, loved me when I couldn't remember why, and fought beside me when everything was at stake." Tears filled her green eyes as I opened the box, revealing a ring with 2 intertwined birds in flight. "Will you continue this adventure with me, as my wife, my partner, my everything?" "Yes," she whispered, pulling me up into a kiss that tasted of champagne and promise. The gallery erupted in cheers. Later that night, we stood on the observation deck of our new home, a modern cabin overlooking the reserve. The stars spread above us like diamonds on velvet. "Look!" Georgia pointed to a massive shape gliding through the darkness. Through my camera's night vision, I captured the image, a California condor, one of our original rescued pairs, teaching its chick to fly. New life, new beginnings. "Sometimes I wonder," Georgia mused, "if you really lost your memories by choice, or if something deeper was guiding you back to me." I lowered the camera, thinking of all the twists and turns that had led us here. Maybe both. Maybe some things are meant to be found. She turned in my arms, her face serious. "I have a surprise too." From her pocket, she pulled out a familiar business card, the one that had first led me back to the reserve. But now it held new information. Georgia and Lauren Wood Patterson, co-directors, International Wildlife Conservation Initiative. "You're taking my name?" I asked, touched. "Part of it," she smiled. "We're creating something new, together." As if on cue, a chorus of wild calls echoed through the night, wolves, owls, and yes, condors. The sound of a healthy ecosystem recovering, thriving. I pulled her close, our rings catching starlight. "To new beginnings?" "To being found," she whispered against my lips. Above us, the condors soared, their wingspan blocking out the stars, not in fear or flight, but in celebration of their freedom. Just like us, they had found their way home. The end.